It's time for another half hour of Hatteberg's People.
And coming up,
it's tiring, but it's where I should be. There's no doubt about it. And each time I come, there's emotional difficulties, but I know that it's what I'm supposed to be doing.
she grew up in the comfort of Kansas, but Dr. Midge Owen took her medical skills where they were needed most. See how she was working against all odds to save lives in conditions most of us would consider unthinkable. Also,
Nadine, just how far would you go on a first date? Well, right now I'd be willing to drive to a different time zone.
His nationally syndicated comic strip entertained Americans from coast to coast. Jerry Biddle was a Wichitan born and bred with a homespun humor that brought laughter to millions of readers. See what happened when he returned home to promote his book, and then learn how it all came to a tragic end. Plus,
I can almost see a head of a dinosaur in that.
Philip Brinkley creates his own Jurassic Park.
This is Dino Central.
it's amazing what can be done with some old junk and a lot of imagination. Philip Brinkley likes to recreate things, whether it's dinosaurs or classic cars. Learn what drives him and why the creativity never stops. And we'll have this story.
It's hard work. It's like any other job. It's something that I really enjoy, though.
she's Wichita's own supermodel. In 1989, Luann Ritchie was the bombshell beauty you saw in magazines and on billboards around the world. See how this local glamour queen actually lived a very down-to-earth life here in Anytown, USA. And then you won't want to miss this.
After the tinsel and the bulbs and the trees are taken down, there are two things that remain in my memory that I will never forget.
It's a Hatteberg's People story about Hatteberg. Larry takes us back to his hometown of Winfield and shares some of his best childhood memories of Christmas. It's great to have you with us. I'm Susan Peters.
And I'm Larry Hatteberg. Those are just some of the stories that are queued up and ready to roll on this edition of Hatteberg's People. These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student.
She could have pursued a comfortable, prosperous medical practice in suburbia, USA.
But instead, Midge Owen booked her ticket for the third world. And that's where I caught up with her back in 2009. She was on a mission to save lives and bring about change in nations struggling with primitive and inadequate medical care.
I bring people together for the common good of humanity. I had this strange dream or passion, even as a young girl, that I wanted to come to Africa.
Goddard, Kansas is a long way from Ghana, West Africa.
I'm a Kansas girl through and through.
But it's here where Dr. Midge Owen grew up.
I'm very close to my family.
Her parents still live here, and it is Kansas where she received her medical degree.
I think it's those deep roots that have really helped me grow.
But now her work is a world away to developing countries like Ghana.
It's like the piercing of my heart that tells me that this is where I need to be at this time. People are so used to death, it's just been all around them.
Dr. Owen is a professor of anesthesiology and obstetrics at Wake Forest University School of Medicine in Winston-Salem. Through her travels and personal experience, she found that healthcare for women in third world countries was crying for intervention.
The reality is, in countries like Ghana and most of Africa and most of Asia, Death during birth is a reality.
For example, in Ghana, culturally, women are given no spinal blocks to help ease the pain of childbirth. And statistics for birthing mothers are sobering.
In America, a woman has a 1 in 5,000 chance of dying having a baby. Here in Ghana, the chance is 1 in 50.
And in other African countries, that statistic is even worse.
Many women come into the labor and delivery process fearing for their very lives, which is a common reality. Healthcare here is, and in many parts of Africa, is as if it was 100 years ago in America. Some of what we're doing here is like we're embarking on a project to outer space, just because the cultures in medicine and cultures are so different.
In response to what she sees as a growing and unfulfilled need, Dr. Owen founded a nonprofit humanitarian organization called Cabela, dedicated to helping birthing women and their babies survive.
We are trying to build up a model that then can be used in other key facilities throughout this country, and I hope one day will be a model for all of Africa.
This maternity ward's small room will have 6 to 8 mothers giving birth in the same room at the same time, most attended by midwives.
Babies aren't even given a name until they're about a week old, and part of that is because many babies don't survive.
Culturally, there is a long way to go. Mothers who have given birth breastfeed on the floor because of the lack of beds.
It's been so overwhelmingly crowded there, and so many babies that have died that the teams have had to step over dead babies on the floor in order to resuscitate the next depressed baby that came out. It's tiring, but it's where I should be. There's no doubt about it. And each time I come, there's emotional difficulties, but I know that it's what I'm supposed to be doing. Each time I come, the reception, the relationships, the friendships, they just continue to grow deeper and deeper. So I feel like I'm actually part of the fabric of this culture now.
In Accra, the capital of Ghana, Ridge Hospital is a busy urban health center, but it's not like its counterparts in America. Healthcare American style is only a dream here.
It's tiring, but it's where I should be.
Dr. Owen has set up medical education programs in Turkey, Croatia, the Republic of Georgia, and here in Africa.
When I walk down this labor ward, when I come to this hospital, I consider those patients as my patients, treating a woman as if she's my sister.
Her specialty is anesthesiology, and on this day, she and team member Dr. Richard Smiley of Columbia University in New York are helping Bridget, a Ghanaian older mother who has had several miscarriages and is hoping for a successful C-section.
Women know people that have died giving birth. In fact, many of them are afraid to come to the hospital because they're afraid they won't come out.
The Cabela team works with the local Ghanaian surgeons to help Bridget's dream of a successful birth come true.
You have a baby girl, okay? They'll bring your baby right here. So this baby's really meaningful for her.
This is your baby.
While the surgical area almost met Western standards, much of the rest of the hospital doesn't. No air conditioning despite the African heat, not many places to wash your hands or flush a toilet. Water is hauled in and placed in tanks. Food is prepared outside. We were told that's because the kitchen is being renovated. The hospital canteen is also outside, as are vendors with fresh fruit.
We don't do something because it's easy, but it's because it's worthwhile. And it doesn't matter how difficult it is. If it's worthwhile, then we should strive for that.
Yet, with these stark realities, the Ghanaian medical staff makes the most of what they have, and they do make a difference.
They teach me how to survive.
In the midst of their day, an emergency.
Could that really be her blood pressure?
A mother's life is in jeopardy.
What's about to say?
She's had a seizure.
The Cabela team assists the Ghanaian doctors. It's touch and go, and her odds aren't good. No one expects her to survive the day.
For your help, people.
Yet, 5 days later, this woman walked out of the hospital. It's a small success for the Cabela team. Progress is slow in Ghana, but it's steady.
Is we have to empower the people locally to be able to bring it up from within themselves. And that's the only way we'll have any sustained improvements in healthcare.
Because of Cabela, computers are being installed for the first time. Nurses and midwives are being trained in life-saving techniques for newborns. New sonogram techniques are introduced. But it is here, in the maternity ward, where you hear the need.
From all the patients that we provide pain relief to, they are amazingly grateful. But we feel that it is a basic human right to provide a suffering human with some degree of pain relief. Okay, we're done. She was pain-free for the second half of her labor and delivery, and she said this was the best labor experience that I've ever had.
Here comes baby.
Here comes your son.
It's a long way to Africa, but the bridge to help humanity is short. Dr. Medjoan makes that trip one baby and one mother at a time.
You know, we take this for granted at home.
Now, a decade after I made that trip, Dr. Owen continues her work in Ghana and other third world nations. The nonprofit she founded, too, continues to expand its work.
That's so incredible. And Owen says mortality rates for newborns and their mothers have declined as a result. And for her amazing efforts, Dr. Owen was recently inducted into the Goddard High School Hall of Fame. Congratulations. And what a giving person. I mean, you can't say enough about her.
Yeah, and her work in the third world is difficult and hard. I was with her 10 days, and the conditions she works under are not fun.
You were with her for 10 days.
And they're not fun.
See?
And I learned a lot from her.
Yeah, kudos to you, though, for going out there for 10 days.
Well, kudos to her for making it all possible, and more important, for helping all those women.
Sometimes laughter is the best medicine, and that's where Jerry Biddle came in.
Yeah, Jerry was a nationally syndicated cartoonist with a strip that was published in newspapers from coast to coast. Well, here's what happened back in 1993 when he came back to his hometown of Wichita.
I really hope I'm not Geach. Let's all take a minute, to get our hair just right here. I've got 2 mics on here. I did do an IRS guy one time, and I dream a little snakier than I would others, so.
You don't normally see artists like Jerry Biddle in the public eye.
Well, I was having fun. I'm not sure how much fun anyone else was having, but.
These are his usual friends, Geach, Merle, Ruby, Nadine, and a host of other characters seen daily in newspapers around the country.
Ruby is actually created from 2 waitresses who used to work at the Fairland Cafe.
Jerry Biddle grew up in Wichita and began his artistic career at the Wichita Eagle. The old Fairland Cafe was where the character Ruby was born. She was patterned after a waitress named Charlotte.
It's kind of funny, a few years later I got a Christmas card from Charlotte. She was in St. Louis living with a truck driver.
And then there's Geach, the comic strip's namesake.
What happened to your eyes? They're all red. I was drinking some coffee and forgot to take out the spoon. I accidentally poked myself. In both eyes, I had 2 cups.
This week, Biddle was making the rounds of local talk shows promoting his new book.
It's easier now than when I started. Even though you create the characters, I don't think you really know them for a couple of years.
But the readers know them because they've met folks just like them.
I like a little disclaimer that, any similarities are purely coincidental. I don't want lawsuits because they're, Merle is one of my best friends, lives in Denver and I went to high school with, and he's aware of it, and we're still good friends, so.
It is faces that Biddle studies. Sometimes in a mall, a restaurant, or even a school, there might be a face that could become a seed for a new member of the Geach family.
I'm a real people watcher.
Faces, like comic strips, are all different.
Nadine, just how far would you go on a first date? Well, right now I'd be willing to drive to a different time zone.
We never got a letter from a reader.
Now as he moves from TV talk show guest,
I remember I was working on jobs in the middle of the night.
to guest artist in a local school, he tells the rest of those budding young artists the secret of his success.
It wasn't a grand plan. I stumbled into it by ignorance, and ignorance has served me well.
Now, Jerry's career continued to blossom. He started a second comic strip in 2000 titled Shirley and Son.
Everything was going great. And then in 2003, while on vacation in Honduras, Jerry dropped dead of a heart attack.
Yeah, he was such a talented guy, and he was young, you know, and he had these two strips going, and I read them all the time.
Yeah.
And most people didn't know that Jerry was from Wichita.
What was from Wichita?
Yeah.
And
It was a mystery, you know, to most people, or a surprise at least, for them to find out that he was from Wichita. But it was kudos for Wichita, it gave Wichita publicity, and then just to have him wiped off the face of the earth, what a surprise and what a
died
shock.
way too young.
Absolutely.
Gone way too young. This next Kansas character is part auto mechanic, part junk man, and part artist.
Yeah, Philip Brinkley has a passion for assembling leftover car and tractor parts into ominous-looking creatures from the past. Take a look at this story from 1998.
It's a Tyrannosaurus. It's about 2/3 scale size, pretty close to that anyway.
They stand like silent sentries from another time, waiting once again for their moment in the sun.
The head is a 1938 Alice Chalmers gas tank off a tractor with parts from a 1950 Dodge hood.
Philip Brinkley of Rose Hill builds dinosaurs from old car parts and tractor parts.
I just accumulate different pieces. These would make good teeth. They're sickle bar teeth from farm implements. Pieces of old tractor seat for maybe a hip bone.
As his imagination continues.
Leaf springs make good ribs. It gets obsessive after a while. You get into it and you can't stop.
All you have to do is look at his front yard and tell that's true.
It's more than just building a dinosaur. It's almost a piece of art. You're constantly worrying about whether you have the shapes and ratios correct.
The dinosaurs had power and a beauty all their own, just like another one of Philip's hobbies. More relics out of the past are admiringly restored in Brinkley's garage, like this very fine 1959 Catalina convertible.
I've probably restored a dozen old Pontiacs at any given time since about 1975. It's basically when I got into Pontiacs. The engine has got a few little chrome goodies on it. It's the 59 tri-power carburation with the 65 GTO intake manifold. To me, they were unusual. They had some lines and styles on them that I liked. They were a powerful car. They always had plenty of horsepower under the hood.
These cars he rebuilds for himself.
I can work on them because I know what makes them tick.
The dinosaurs he builds for others.
Basically, they're going to start as a spine unit, which is usually a piece of pipe. This one here may be a 6-foot Raptor style dinosaur. Ankle bones.
His imagination is fertile, and Brinkley says he's the kind of guy who has to keep his hands moving, fixing, and building.
You know, I could take a week vacation and work on one of these. To me, that would be a vacation. Link all these together and form the backbone.
Like a mortician surrounded by body parts,
I can almost see a head of a dinosaur in that.
Philip Brinkley creates his own Jurassic Park.
This is Dino Central.
Dinosaurs come in many forms. Some stand tall with teeth and tail. Others fur with fossil fuels.
They're like a dinosaur too. They're kind of extinct to a certain degree.
Now, 20 years later, Philip's dinosaur collection has just gotten bigger. Here are some recent photos posted on kansastravel.org. And you can Google the phone number and location if you'd like to see it in person and to have Philip give you a tour. The creativity of these artists, you know, and they're so proud of what they've done, and they should be, because this takes incredible talent. And when you see his work and how he's put it together and what he's used to make these creatures, it's absolutely fascinating.
And the thing about many of the artists you feature in Hatteberg's people, they don't seem to care if they make a dime. They just want to make art.
They want to make art, and they're having fun while they do it, or they wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, the 1980s was the decade of the supermodel, and Wichita could claim Luann Ritchie as its very own.
Yeah, Luann was known around the world for her beauty and glamour, but back home she lived a very normal, down-to-earth life.
Most of the models that do model in New York don't live in New York. There are some that do, but there are some that live, I have friends that live in Oregon or Minnesota, and it's all you hop on the plane and then you go do the job, and then that job is finished and that's over with, and then you wait till the next job. So it's so flexible that you really don't have to live in the city, in that particular city or that market to work.
Luann Ritchie is a Newton native whose face has been associated with international advertisements for years. She's with the Ford Modeling Agency in New York and the Tanya Blair Agency in Dallas. Her modeling has included Vogue, Oscar de la Renta, Mary Kay, Neiman Marcus, Dillard's, and she's currently the exclusive national billboard model for Canadian Club.
It's hard work. It's like any other job. It's something that I really enjoy, though. I love it a lot. I get to wear beautiful clothes, which I love clothes, and I love marketing. And I think modeling is a great combination of the two of these things. So I really enjoy it, but it is tough at the same time, like any job is.
I scored on that.
That was great.
So it was a tie game on that championship.
Wow.
Luann and her husband have 2 children, 7-year-old Sammy and 5-year-old Coleman.
I think the minute that you're away from them, the minute they go to school, I always wonder what they're doing, and you always want to be there with them for everything. But it's good for me because it makes me appreciate them even more, and I'm so glad to be home, and it makes me very thankful for them and what I do have here in Wichita. I've established my priorities, for one thing, and I know what's most important in my life, and that's my family.
She was recently crowned Mrs. Kansas in Kansas City, and she'll compete for the national title in October.
I don't believe in luck. I think that luck is when preparation crosses the path of opportunity. So I've worked very hard, though, to have these things come about. And if they do, it's wonderful. And if they don't, then I have my family, and it's just the icing on the cake for me. I'm disciplined and committed and energetic and family-oriented and Kansas through and through.
Now, Luann was selected first runner-up in the 1990 Mrs. America pageant, and now 30 years later, she is still living in Wichita. Her sons, of course, are grown. They all have successful careers. Luann has 3 grandkids now, and she was recently featured in the Wichita City Moms blog with other members of the Thursday afternoon cooking club.
Yes.
Life changes from the supermodel status to mom and grandma status.
She has the best of both worlds.
She really did. Very, very kind woman. When I did the story with her, very nice. Loved her family. So
we're proud of her.
Congratulations to her.
Christmas is a time for making new memories and sharing old ones. Back in 1996, Larry was feeling a little sentimental and went back to his hometown of Winfield to reminisce.
My Christmas memories begin here in Winfield, Kansas, with these 2 adults. Now, I'm the smaller guy, the guy who was underfoot a lot, and yes, that's me too. It was fun being a kid at Christmas in this house. It was fun being a kid in this house anytime.
All of us have childhood memories of the town we grew up in, mine here in Winfield, of course. But you know, it isn't the town that makes the memory. It's the people who touch your lives, and in my case, it was my parents. Merle and Mary Hatteberg, my mom and dad, were the biggest influence in my life, and the greatest gift they gave me wasn't necessarily at Christmas. It was year-round. Early on, my mother was a nurse. My father owned the Peerless Bakery in Winfield. Work was the center of our life, and I was the center of theirs. The wind may be bitter and cold, but not in my heart, because this used to be my old neighborhood, and about Christmas time, we always put the Christmas tree about right here. Our house used to sit right about here, and this is where the Christmas tree went. But you know, Thomas Wolfe was right. He said, you can never go home again. And as you can see, my neighborhood is gone, my house is gone, but I have a lot of memories that I keep right here. Like the year I got that teddy bear for Christmas, or that tricycle I rode all over the neighborhood, but I continued to grow. Another Christmas came, and it was aviation that took my interest. This was my father's bakery right here, and I used to play on the sidewalk in front of the bakery, and I remember many Christmas Eves when I used to pace back and forth out here in front of the bakery waiting for him to close up because I couldn't wait to get home to open my presents. Our tradition was that we always opened our presents on Christmas Eve. But boy, when he was closing up that bakery, it seemed he walked so slow.
While I grew, my parents continued their work, and I too spent time at the bakery, at first playing, and later working alongside my dad. His gifts weren't always under a tree. He taught me about people, about the hardships of life, and gave me a work ethic. He taught me life isn't always fair, and when it wasn't for him, he faced it with dignity and poise. My mother, meanwhile, was always there for me, always, and still is. It is her patient and gentle nature that I treasure. Her love has been a constant, easily shared, gratefully accepted.
It was Christmas Eve, and my mom took me driving, I think, so my dad could put the presents around the tree. I wasn't too sure about Santa Claus at that point. And while we're out here driving in this neighborhood, both my mom and I looked out the window, and on top of one of these houses was a real Santa Claus going down the chimney. I want to tell you, from that point on, I knew there was a Santa Claus. When Dad finally got home from the bakery, I was so excited because we always opened our presents on Christmas Eve, and one of my favorite toys was this fire engine, and I will never forget the Christmas Eve that I got it, and I still have it, and who knows, maybe someday I'll be a fireman. I think I always wanted to grow up to be one anyway, and somehow took a wrong turn. Well, I was a spoiled only child when I grew up, and my mom would deny it, but it was absolutely true. But I have great memories of our Christmases. But after the presents are gone, after the tinsel and the bulbs and the trees are taken down, there are two things that remain in my memory that I will never forget.
My mom and dad sacrificed a lifetime so I could talk with you tonight. And for me, Christmas never stopped. Well, it's always odd for me to look back on these stories, you know, when you go back to where you grew up and the person you were then and now the person you are now. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad,
Yeah.
you know.
In this case, it's very good.
Well, I don't know about that, but I always enjoy going back to Winfield because my memories there are really positive, and going back there is like coming home.
It is, isn't it? And you have done several stories from Winfield that are kind of going home stories, and maybe we can see some of those later on in the season.
I'm guessing it's possible.
I'd love to see them.
Okay, everybody, we are out of time, but don't be a stranger. Jot down the email address, hattebergspeople@kpts.org, and let us know what you think of the show. And be sure to join us again next time. I'm Larry Hatteberg.
And I'm Susan Peters. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again real soon.